Sinclair Harris. I'm your moderator for the day. I've got two missions. Number one is to speak less so that you can hear the people that you want to hear speak, talk more. And number two, to get you all time to ask your questions towards the end. And actually, I got three missions. Because you got the second half luncheon, got to get you out of here so you have time to go use the bathroom on the way out before you go over to the luncheon. So that's my mission for today. This contested logistics, building resilience, I don't think anybody in here doesn't know the different challenges we have in terms of getting our beans, bullets, black oil, parts, and everything else out to the war fighters. And understand that it's not just contested by the enemy. You know, we don't have wolf packs of submarines running around out there knocking off convoys yet. But we do have bad weather. We do have distance. We do have regulations. We do have a number of things that contest the ability to provide what our warfighters need. So we've got a great panel here that's going to talk to you. Again, I'm going to stop at about 5 minutes and then give them the final chance to speak. We've got a couple of slides, but please get your questions. Got a microphone over there. You can line up for that. But with that, I'm going to start with Miss Mindy Montgomery. She works in OpNav, so she's going to give us a view from the top. And oh, by the way, yesterday, CNO Franchetti, toward the end of her Sea Service panel, said logistics, logistics, logistics.
Amen.
It's like lethality, lethality, lethality. And I said to myself, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. It was scary stuff. So please give us a view from the top.
Well, obviously logistics is important. CNO is talking about it too. Navy is actually now viewing logistics as a warfighting function. Back in World War II, General Eisenhower said, you will not find it difficult to prove that battles, campaigns, and even wars have been won or lost primarily because of logistics. We're now kind of refocusing and calling it and adopting the joint definition and calling it sustainment, focusing broader than just logistics and incorporating installations and the support for services and medical capabilities, because it's really sustaining the force. It's not just the logistics, it's everything you need to sustain the force. CNO recently signed out America's Warfighting Navy, and her priorities are warfighting, warfighters, and the foundation. For the Naval Logistics Enterprise delivers capabilities that underpin the warfighters, warfighting, and the foundation. She's soon to release the Maritime Sustainment Strategy, and that's our strategy within the Naval Logistics Enterprise. That's Navy's roadmap for moving with purpose and urgency to improve the Navy's capabilities, capacity, and competencies. You've heard of defense in depth. We're building sustainment in depth. We're building a sustainment kill web, which is basically modeled on the warfighting kill chain to illustrate the flow of goods and services from the industrial base to the installations, to the inter and the intra-theater, all the way to the point of need, and then returning for resupply and medical services. And all of this is underpinned by logistics, command and control, ConOps, and IT systems. In a contested environment, we need to make sure we have the right mix of capability, capacity, and trained sailors who can excel in these contested environments and maintain the right operational security, situational awareness, and mental focus to execute our sustainment mission and improve warfighter and warfighting survivability.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go to probably the second largest fleet in the world, the Military Sealift Command, Admiral Sobeck. And I know yesterday the second most popular topic was Baltimore and what's happened there. I know you guys have stuff there also in Gaza, I believe, with JLOT. So over to you, Admiral Sobeck. And can we bring up his slide there, James Brown?
Hey, sir, and Sink, thanks so much for hosting this. Appreciate all that you do, certainly for our future. and as much as you interact, certainly between all of your part-time jobs, all volunteer, getting after, again, the best of our future. And Justin, thanks again for you and your team for sponsoring this panel, and certainly, I'm honored to be a part of this panel. When I think through, this discussion, one is congratulations for making it to Potomac 1 and 2, around the corner through the bend. And apologize, I feel like I'm certainly in the Eclipse waiting station here, as the light is right in my eyeball here. So, but the bottom line is we are absolutely at a tipping point. If you sailed in the Merchant Marines, can you please stand up? So please, a round of applause. And the reason why I start with that, if you think about contested logistics, you think about the far left of where the spectrum of contested logistics is. 9,521 mariners lost their lives in World War II. And we think about where positioning of our stocks were in preparing for World War II, but also during World War II. It was mostly forward. 80% of our pre-positioning that was in theater is now in the CONUS. And so you think through a Baltimore exercise. Unfortunately, the first thing I thought about it when I was given the phone call at about 1:30 in the morning was this a first in the series? And so the generation of 9/11 certainly, will think through that. And because most of our Ready Reserve fleet is behind a bridge or behind a tunnel and a bridge. And so if you think through that about what we would do to scale and project power at the speed and need that we will need to for a peer fight in the Pacific, then that starts bringing the challenges of contested logistics. Additionally, if we think through how Admiral Winnefeld mentioned yesterday, if you're a part of that panel about ends, ways, and means, he was speaking clearly about the strategic ends, ways, and means. But when I look at MSC, the ends, ways, and means, the ends, providing the speed, tempo, and scale of logistics, for the warfighter in a JWC 3.0 sort of environment. And we can think through that a little bit. The ways we can talk about, but I want to, I'll leave that to the end. The means, right? The resourcing. 25 is giving us really the first punch up, in resourcing and sustainment that we've seen over the last, frankly, the decade. And it's been ramping up based on the understanding that an old fleet and the ability to sustain that fleet is becoming more and more costly. And then we think through the other ways, or the other means, is the people. Mariner shortage is something that, again, was addressed yesterday in stride, a lot from the administrator or the MARAD administrator, but it absolutely is critical for MSC. And we think through, again, where we are in licensed mariners and the way we recruit. So shout out, to Navy League and the Sea Cadet, sort of way of business of getting, the mariners of the future, quickly understood. But it's absolutely a national impact that we're seeing. And we need to understand that, and we need to come together in this integrated fashion. But the ways, I believe, is the difference maker here. Again, just like the active fleet and the USS fleet, we're going to have in the decisive decade and decisive windows, we're basically going to have what we have as we speak today. What can we do differently? What do we have to do differently in order to get after it? And so our ability to champion where N4, UpNav N4 is going in their next version of the strategic maritime sustainment strategy is absolutely important for us to take a look at our kill chain and how we work at that kill chain. And so we have to start with data. We have to be able to understand ourselves well enough. In a previous discussion, AI, when everyone kind of sprinkles AI over everything, the world is solved, or the world is a complete disaster because it's going to go too fast for us, right? But it starts with the foundational knowledge of who we are and what the data set is. We don't have that in our supply chain right now in a full extent, and we certainly don't have it in transition, in our mobility, and in transit visibility is absolutely a thorny problem. Then you have where the sets are, the data sets are throughout the continuum supply chains. And you start thinking about quickly about how cyber effects can be absolutely a game changer against us or for us, and the ability to actually move supplies and things at the speed and scale that we need to. So you think through all those kind of things, just in the data set. We haven't moved anything yet. And then the continuum keeps on going on. When we think about, again, FHA and Gaza, again, the Navy Army team working together to make sure, again, that we can facilitate moving prepositioned forces and JLOTs into theater at the time and choosing of the national requirements, and then positioning themselves to be ready to go on station. That's happening as we speak. And so that is and will be certainly a contested environment from the traditional sense of what that means and how that works. But it's the foundational grip about the manpower and keeping the sustainment faculties alive, the training alive, to make sure that we're ready to go when the nation calls. When we talk about the Red Sea, we're conducting bi-weekly phone calls with mariners, all the U.S. flags. We're talking through them at length and at basically in situ of how things are going. Again, the latest one was this morning with with Yorktown, Mayor's Yorktown, that was again under fire from the Houthis. And so it's going to be a continuing effort, but we have the right defense structure in place. We have the right communication in place, and we've got to be able to fight through those choke points. Think about it, $2.3 trillion going through the Battle of Mendev. You can't just kind of stop that without understanding what the add-on effects are. $5.3 trillion through the Straits of Malacca. So you add those two together, the globe pretty much stops spinning in the way that it needs to spin. And the ability to make sure allies, partners, certainly access basing and overflight happen because everyone goes into an economic strife. And so they're going to, as rightfully so, as we will, nation first, protect the homeland, and then move on to making sure the greater good happens. Everyone will be in that fighting crouch, guaranteed. That's contested logistics, and we can certainly look forward to your conversations and questions.
Thank you very much, Admiral. And Admiral Winnefeld, he talked about, like I said, in ways, he talked about the environment. And I think that the JLOTS operation and what is going on now in Gaza is a perfect example of the contested environment from a geopolitical, from a safety, security, a number of other things that I know you're worried about to make sure our warfighters get what they need. Okay, we got a little bit of a break. Our friends from NAVAIR provided us a really cool video. Go ahead and play that beautiful bean footage there, James Brown. Bring it up here. I know there wasn't a whole lot of logistics outright there, but if you read the small print, you know everything that was going on inside there depended on logistics. And where will we be as a naval force? A naval force, that includes Coast Guard, without our system commanders. So representing the system commanders, Ms. Ann Wood, please bring us an update on day and into the future. Where are you taking us?
Thank Thank you, everybody. Just a trivia, about 4,100 aircraft within naval aviation. You know, people know the ship numbers, but that's a lot of airplanes, right? And nothing that happened in that video can happen without this team here, right? Even Justin and the analytics that's required to know what we need, where we need it, and when we need it, right? That's the advancements that we are making within the Navy on how we do our analytics and where we position our stuff. So I'm just a little trivia. I was in naval aviation as an enlisted avionics technician many years ago, before there was really the internet and cell phones, right? And I operated in some pretty austere environments in the Middle East, the North Atlantic, and the Western Pacific. And so being in those places in 1 to 2 plane detachments where you didn't have reach back, you really relied on having reliable aircraft, reliable weapon systems, reliable mission systems. Because when they break, you're a long way from home. There's a lot of blue water, especially in the Western Pacific. So our real goal, when Mindy had talked about foreign navies focus on the war fighting, the war fighter, and the foundation. For sustainment, it has been really neglected as part of that foundation aspect of it. Think about our infrastructure and our IT. So it's very, very pleased to hear what OPNAV and the focus there, and even with Congress on readiness, is happening. And also the war fighter. We focus a lot on the war fighter as being the aviator, the ship drivers, the sub drivers, those cool things. But the maintainers have been left back in what I would call a second generation sustainment system. And we're deploying 5th gen aircraft right now. We're developing 6th gen aircraft and weapon systems. And we still can treat our maintainers, and we equip them with 2nd generation sustainment. So we are on a mission to, as we deploy any 5th and 6th gen equipment and capability, that maintainer and that sustainment system is equal with them. There's a lot of stuff that we have to do, and I'm quite confident that all of us are in the game. There's another thing I want to point out. For our maintainers, for our sailors, for our Marines, they're putting their trust in every one of us each and every day, that the equipment that we're giving them, the training we're providing them, that they are going to be able to do their missions and return home safely. So that's everyone. So there's a lot of trust there. So I want to just put that, if you are in this room, because I've never seen a room called contested logistics with people standing in the back. This is awesome. But know that you play a huge part in what you do every day, whether you're a manufacturer delivering new capability on time, which is so needed, right? Or if you're developing training systems or training manuals, all of that plays a huge role, because all those cool things, that video, they would happen once, right? And actually they can't even happen once without our sustainment force. So thank you. I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wooden. And when I think of NAVAIR in particular and sustaining the force inside the weapon engagement zone, out on the tip of the spear, so much of our supply system is dependent on staying connected. So now you're battling through the cyber attacks and the hacking and the problems there. The planes are going to fly into DEW environments and make sure they're made. So you guys have lots of work over there. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Justin Wolf, and let's give a hand to Systicon. They're the ones who paid for this. They're the ones who set it up. They're innovators in the world of logistics. They are focused on this. And Justin, give us an industry perspective.
Yeah, just to echo Ms. Wood, I think it was 5, maybe 6 years ago, we were both on a sustainment focus panel, and I think there were 4 people in the room, and they tucked us off in a broom closet somewhere and said, oh, nobody cares about all that. We're going to buy some cool, nice, shiny things, and that's what our panels are going to focus on. And I think we're in this really great position now, where I'm at in my company, to see what both the Navy is doing and largely the DoD as a whole, and also how the industrial base is trying to respond to this idea of contested logistics, this idea that we can't just move things in an unconstrained way into theater to sustain our weapon systems, right? And as it really we think about what this means, this idea really boils down to where we've been focused perhaps since maybe 2012 or 2013, which was the idea of efficiency, right? We want to have our cost per flying hour be as low as possible, or reduce the total ownership costs of our systems to the greatest extent possible. And in a lot of cases, that meant cutting all of the logistics functions considerably, right? So very little analytics being done. We were buying weapon systems perhaps, but not really thinking about the long-term implications, not only with regards to the way in which we're sustaining or able to sustain our weapon systems, but operationally how they would perform in these kinds of limited support scenarios. As we kind of transition to this idea of resilience, right, we really start needing to really focus on enabling decision makers to implement these kind of targeted ideas around risk mitigation and system improvements, right, where we can't just always chase the next shiny object without actually doing the modeling and simulation to understand what it means to deploy this thing operationally, right? We're not flying in air shows, right? We're going to be operating in places that and in situations that we haven't seen in the last 80 years, right? Where we don't own airspace entirely, right? We don't own the sea entirely. And we're operating from some perhaps very large distances that are going to make operating in contested waters during these periods of heightened tensions, or perhaps during natural disasters, it's going to make it very important to understand what we're getting ourselves into, right? And by having these very detailed and very comprehensive decision support models, not only can we understand what we're getting ourselves into, but we can also give industry the message to produce, right? Because we don't have the ability to, say, wait 3 years for a spare part, right? We need to give them that signal early, understanding that it takes some time to be able to produce something, be able to make something. And the tools exist today. So I'm really excited to see, what the Navy is doing both at OpNav, but then also within NAVSEA and the Coast Guard and NAVAIR to help get industry ready, and then understand where we're headed from a readiness and endurance supply and a number of other things that are underway to get us ready to go fight this fight.
Thank you, Justin. It makes me think of additive manufacturing as being part of, I know that across the Navy and across the Joint Force, more emphasis has been made on how to do that, what we can do to help sustain the force better in contested areas. So you can start getting in line behind the microphone, but I have a couple of questions to get us warmed up. Mindy, how is the Navy increasing resiliency and agility to address contested logistics challenges?
We're modernizing and recapitalizing our infrastructure. As Ann talked about, that we have not done in the past, and that's a lot of it is operational. Piers, our shipyards, we consider that operational infrastructure. So we are working to make sure that those are recapitalized and properly sustained. So once we recapitalize it, we need to make sure we sustain it at that level that we've just recapitalized. We're investing in expeditionary reload capability to be able to reload at sea. We talked about it several times. We're developing modern, secure IT systems, and also using data analytics to be able to forecast what we need and predict, and use predictive logistics to predict where we need to be to deliver that sustainment. We're increasing to help Phil Sobek and the MSC. We've increased funding for our combat logistics ships. We're increasing the maintenance repair to make sure that our ships are ready to go. And we're also building some dedicated expeditionary medical ships to help the medical piece of it. I talked about the sustainment kill chain, sort of the retrograde piece, to make sure that we adequately support our sailors and Marines. So, and getting to the training and education, we are also focusing on that education piece. We're focusing on our people to make sure that they're able to operate in this new environment. So we're trying to look holistically. What do we need to do? What are those capabilities? And we're actually we're focusing on them and actually funding those capabilities. So it's quite a change. We're seeing things that we didn't used to do in the sustainment community. People are focusing on it, and we're actually putting our money where our mouth is.
Thank you very much, Mindy. And I'm going to get to you, gentlemen. I appreciate your patience. What do you think the biggest challenge is for naval aviation, Marine Corps, and Navy when it comes to operating in a contested environment? And what are some of the things naval aviation is doing to get after those challenges?
So I have three primary areas. There's the design and development of the weapon system. There's our sustainment strategies, and then there's the wartime planning. So when I talk about the design, we always talk about design for effectiveness, and guess what's typically traded off? Reliability, maintainability, right? So what we are doing is early on in our new acquisitions, we are really incentivizing that design for sustainment. We're leveraging model-based systems engineering and model-based product support to put hooks in the system so that we can see if there are trades, or if, as we're actually doing testing, some of the reliability isn't coming to fruition, and incentivizing that. That is super important. One of the stats I heard, I think Dr. Morani had talked about, was 70% of all the O&S costs are within, during the design and development phase. By the first time any metal, or now I'll say composite, is cut or molded, 90% of the O&S costs are baked in. So we try to chase O&S costs in service, and I won't say it's futile. There's work to be done there, but really it's in that upfront. And it's not just the design of the new weapon systems, it's all the modification programs. We've got billions of dollars of modification programs going on. So if we can do whatever we can do to increase the reliability there, will pay dividends in the long term. AM is another big thing we're pushing, that additive manufacturing, and there's also the advanced manufacturing, right? If we leverage that, then that also reduces our O&S costs, and it really improves our maintainability. Sustainment strategies. So our sustainment strategies for the last 20 years have been based on operating wherever we want, whatever we want, with rapid replenishments. Right? Our replenishments were measured in days. That's not where we're at now. Right? So in order to effectively deter, that's our main goal, right? We need to make sure that we have the right stuff we have the right stuff in the right places, so that wherever we are, our resupply is absolutely effective, but also that we can endure it. So if you think about a rapid replenishment and what we were talking about being in the WES, we're not replenishing when we're in the WES, right? So what do we have to do differently? Change our maintenance concepts. Most of our maintenance concepts for our aircraft are the same as when we go afloat as ashore. We're re-looking at that. What are we equipping those airplanes with? Are we really grooming them with the most reliable weapon systems before we go? What are those things that we can do so we don't have to put huge stockpiles aboard our ships? Also, our distributed operations, our maritime land-based, we cannot carry huge backup kits around. So what do we do different there? So that's really tackling the design, the sustainment strategies. Like I said, we were built on rapid replenishments. We're not doing that anymore. So what else do we need to do to change that? Can we equip our maintainers with D-level skill sets? So when they're afloat, they're not calling back to the OEMs anymore, right? When we're disconnected, we are disconnected. We're contested, we're contested. So how can we equip them AM afloat? Oh, that's a pretty good idea. We're already doing some of that. Certifying our Marines to D-level skills. We've already got some of those there. So those are the things, the different types of strategies we're having to think about, really think, act, and operate differently in order to regain that competitive advantage. The other thing is the wartime planning. Even though we've been at war, we say that for the last 20 years, have we really been at war at the scale that we're talking about? We don't want to, so therefore we're gonna have best plans in place so that our enemies will be deterred. However, if we do, we're gonna win decisively and back home safely. Wartime planning, joint, that's big, right? We're doing joint wartime planning. We've got tabletop exercises. We're doing procurement planning based upon if you go into wartime usage rates, it's way different than peacetime usage rates, right? And then the last thing, one of the things I thought was pretty ironic, when I talked about battle damage for all those airplanes we have. So what happens? We get battle damage. We have battle damage repair manuals. The last time it was updated was 1986. So, okay, I think we need to update that, right? So we've been updating all that, leveraging new technologies and capabilities that are out there. Another thing I want to hit on is our environment. Corrosion costs us about $2 billion annually. So the technologies that are out there for whether you're in design or in modifications, the new technologies for coatings, materials, any of that is very important for us to reduce the cost of ONS so that we can actually buy some more cool, shiny stuff. Thank you.
I started as a deck division officer, so I know rust never sleeps.
Right, right.
The young folk don't know what I'm talking about. The other ones, they've got the album. Last question before I go over here to the crowd here for you, Admiral. Tell us, what does operationalizing sustainment look like for Military Sealift Command and the Combat Logistics Force?
Great question. It's a lot of different ways that we're working on right now. We're, again, taking OpNav's lead and certainly CNO's lead for warfighters and foundation piece of it. The foundation clearly is, or I think it's a whole base of logistics support. But modernizing and optimizing, operationalizing whatever we are in the midst of, it comes in a lot of different flavors. First of all, it's got to be through and foremost through the mariners, making sure an integrated sort of management system, the way that we recruit, retain, and manage our mariners is of the days of sail and days of pure coal. And so we've got to really step up our game in that regard. Working very closely with MARAD, working very closely with all of the service academies and maritime academies and unions. Thanks for being here, and certainly, making sure that we provide the quality of service and respond to their incredible service to our country. And so that starts with that, and that's it's a game changer from just being able to look at ourselves again in credentialing, understanding from the Coast Guard, understanding of licensing all the way through, and making sure that is a whole system so that we can recruit and retain our finest. So that's job one. Job two truly is understanding ourselves as a comprehensive command and control node. I started out with data as sort of the essence about who we are and how we need to maneuver. If we're going to keep speed and scale and tempo with our warfighters, we absolutely have to think differently about what we do. For example, we look at rearm in the Red Sea. Our first rearm was in Rota, Spain, a couple of kilometers away from the fight. And so, although not fighting in the wet and not rearming in the WES, of course, but we got to be a little bit closer than that. And so quickly, we're able to operationalize our expeditionary teams. The reserve element here is absolutely fundamental to our ability to scale at speed, and the phenomenal work that CNR and Navi LSG does. Absolutely, paramount. They're in Yuma today, in Saudi Arabia, and again on their month-long first 30 days now into their fifth 30 days of operations. And so how do we exercise that? 5 TAKEs, thank you again for the funding and the absolute support to get 5 TAKEs with the next version of a float rearm capability and everything else. And so we'll see how that kind of manifests itself. But what does it matter? When we fought through COVID, we understood some of the limb facts. It wasn't our ability to manufacture quickly. And I apologize for going through a pathway that may be a scar there, but the bottom line is we were able to go through a defensive act and actually get into the manufacturing that we needed. It was now positioning, it was now warehousing, it was now getting hyper cold storage. It was all the things that matter. Now you think through that, and just as easy as getting the expeditionary rearm capability on board one of my CLF platforms, I have the cradles, I have the right sort of connection points to be able to go rearm wherever the ships are, manufacture wherever all the the ammo loads are on our TAKEs. We don't do that today. We've got to fly it across. We've got to find out where a crane is. We got to find. And we will be disrupted at every turn, guaranteed, right? So we've got to think smarter. That's not a lot of money. That's just positioning ourselves, command and control ourselves in a way that is absolutely in the same pathway as the 3. The 4 has always been in the, Potomac 1 and 2, right? And so we have been in the places where we support in a quiet and a professional way, but we've got to be in step with the operational commanders and work through that. That is MSC's core job right now, is to make sure that we can align ourselves in a functional way alongside the warfighter. And so hopefully the panel next year has a bunch of 3s next to the 4s, and we have a real conversation about how we're going to actually maneuver this. You think additive manufacturing as a point of absolute interest, but where are we going to get supplies from? Is it going to be the host country? Well, what host country is that going to be? The right supplies for the right material for the right additive manufacturing printing press. We can put it afloat, but we got to now store all that stuff. And so that's all doable. But if we think about it at the time of need, we're going to be in a position where we are, or we were in Ukraine. Innovation and the creative design of the American workforce and the team of teams with the sailors and Marines out there, absolutely second to none. There's no doubt. That is not the strain we want to put on them in the time of need. Modernization, optimization, and really the effectiveness about how we're going to fight the war is absolutely the paramount piece. So thanks.
Question to go to, and a question, not a speech.
30 years ago this month, I stepped on my first merchant ship at the Maritime College. I've never been thanked, asked to stand up, or the other services. Not once, so thank you, Admiral. My question is, the first time I broke down in tears was a speech by a merchant mariner who was in the Bataan Death March. He didn't talk about the Navy, he talked about General MacArthur. He talked about the Army Corps of Engineers building forts in Manila Bay. The second time I cried was when my wife, a merchant mariner, loaded her ship for MSC at Sunny Point Army Terminal. They brought in a regiment of Army National Guard. They had engine problems. The Army Corps of Engineers came out in Army watercraft. The Army called close air support in the Suez Canal. It wasn't until she got into the Gulf that the Navy provided support. And then in Kuwait, under fire, it was the Army to protect her. I don't see much involvement in the Army in the Red Sea. I don't see many Army uniforms here. 30 years ago, it was the Army, we were told, that was protecting merchant ships. Are they doing their part?
Absolutely. Right as we speak, the little engines that could, the Army watercraft that went through the Atlantic through 3 different storms and some engineering casualties are, making their way in to support the FHA in Gaza. And so clearly Army Corps of Engineers are, knee deep in Baltimore right now. We all have to work this as a joint force. And I think your point, one, again, thank you for your service and certainly your bride's service and your family of service. But the bottom line is, Army is the joint lead on sustainment. They have the entire continuum of sustainment. I believe, again, through the efficiency model that we've learned over the last 30 years, is that, when we did a clear hub and spoke into Kuwait or into, 2 other locations in the Middle East, and we just spoke them out and, just time and need, and we had zero of, we didn't have zero, but we had some limitations, but not many other than terrain, getting him to the end state. Completely different game changers right now. And so we're starting to see that. The theater sustainment commands, the joint force delivery and distribution operation centers are still too much a PowerPoint, deep. I won't say the TSCs are not, but the PDocs or the DD docs still are kind of ratcheting it up in a way that is not going to meet the need and the speed. So, fully to answer your question, absolutely, the Army is supportive in every aspect of this. They are working sort of from the prepo position. They're helping us support at Fort Eustis and Materials Command, 7TBX and Transportation Command. Are driving and running. ARCENT will run the FHA, into Gaza. The Red Sea really is a maritime effort right now, based on we're not going to, do too many supply networks right in the Yemen area and everything else. But the supporting areas, ARCENT is absolutely knee deep in all of that. It's a great question.
Thank you, sir.
Let's not forget all those merchant mariners who died in World War II. I think the highest casualty rate of any group were the merchant men. So let's not forget them. Sir.
Right. Good morning. My name is Brian Garber. I work for the Global Bulk Fuel Management Division at U.S. Transportation Command. My question is for you, Admiral Sobek, sir. Given the worldwide capacity currently of U.S. flagged tankers, whether CLF or commercial charter, do you feel that in a pure fight that we can rely solely on the U.S. flag fleet, sir?
No. I mean, absolutely not. And I don't know who started this whole global fuel thing, but that person should be fired. But absolutely not. It is going to be all comers, right? And it's going to be where you are and where we need. The industry participation, obviously, where we are in TSP and where we are in other areas to be able to magnify our ability to deliver fuel is absolutely paramount. But industry partnerships, global partnerships, because the game has changed, underneath our feet, frankly, to where China has gotten most of those, larger tankers and the ability to grab after those. And so we need to think through again how we will pool ourselves to be able to scale and scope everything else. But it's going to have to be, again, this concert between DLA and certainly Transcom delivering the effects globally and filling in the seams behind all of that. And so those partnerships and what you're doing today, through feasibility, through understanding fully what the requirement is, where it needs to be, and how do we best, put fuel afloat. The console tanking system, Stena Polaris right now, in the Red Sea, moving north to go refuel so she can come back to the Red Sea. And then we are instantly taking away that choke point necessary, to go refuel without, disrupting the gas patterns, between MGO or anything else that would then disrupt sort of the end chain of what those gas pieces are. The other aspect, again, we've got to get through additives in a different way. And we've got to think through it differently because of where the commercial sector is going. And we need to understand that additives can be a game changer for us as well. But we've got to be able to channel that, understand where it is, to be able to actually apply it. And then get NAVSEA and NAVAIR standards, everything else. Again, airplanes don't like to go out of the sky because of fuel. And we don't want to change any of that dynamic, but it's absolutely critical as we look at distributed maritime operations, EAB networks, ACE, for the Air Force, you name it. So, no, we just don't have an inherent fleet that can do it. We can scale to a point, but again, MSC will go from what I have right now, 140 total ships to over 400 in the time of need at the left end of that contested environment.
Thank you, sir.
We need to have another chair up here. I should have brought Admiral Doug Noble up here from DLA. But please join me in thanking DLA for the work that the Defense Logistics Agency does to fight in the contested environment every single day. You guys are great. D9, sir.
Thanks for a great panel, and it's good to see some friendly faces up there. I'm glad Ms. Wood brought up the value chain, looking at resiliency and capability on the front end of design. On the back end of design, there's some interesting things in play, and I'm just wondering if the Navy's looked at them. So, speaking of DLA, the Army's working with DLA to take used equipment, metal in particular, breaking it down and then building new parts from it using additive manufacturing capabilities. DARPA has a program out there called Rebel to Rockets, which is looking at forging battle damaged equipment, battle damaged construction materials to reconstitute on site new parts, particularly for battle damaged equipment. So is the Navy looking at those kinds of technologies?
We do some of that for engines, and we're actually looking to expand that market. I would think right now it's maybe around $3 million worth a year or so we do, but we are looking to expand that capability.
From my perspective, that's something I haven't heard of before. So I'm actually very interested in looking into that more. Within N4, we're expanding our additive manufacturing, advanced manufacturing focus. And I believe we're looking at the potential to stand up a program office because we think it's very important. So that'll be one of the things we definitely look into.
Okay, I got 4 people on the line. I got 9 minutes on the clock. 5 of them want to use at the end, so make it fast.
Make it fast. Augie Tellez, EVP of the Seafarers International Union. No question. Quick comment. A public thanks to Admiral Sobek and the rest of the team, MARAD, Transcom, SETCOM, NAVCENT, brave folks on the Eisenhower Group, for all their efforts in protecting our sailors, our mariners who are going to harm's way in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. The regular dialogue, open dialogue between decision makers and the operations guys and the affected parties paid off tremendously. Finally, think we've got a ConOps that works. To your great participation, I just want to thank you on behalf of all those mariners in harm's way. Thank you a lot.
Sir, go.
Make it as quick as I can. Jeff Bernhard, Collins Aerospace Avionics. I retired about 5 years ago from being a naval aviator. Now I sell avionics back to NavAir. And my kind of comment or question is, I've been trying to take the message back that we need to think about better how we help sustain the kind of situations that the Navy faces, which is different than civilian aircraft in the Air Force and the Army. But it kind of falls on deaf ears because what we see as experience is that acquisition cost, development, and additional initial production is what wins you a program, and that's what businesses are going to care about in the end. So my question for you to answer partly now or think about better is, how do we incentivize companies like us to do that so that we can help you better, because it's just not the way that we see things happen.
Yeah, you're right. If it's not happening in the RFP and the contracts, it's not going to happen. So that's where we've been focusing a lot and learning a lot, I'll say, on what kind of contract strategies we use and what we actually put in for those KPPs and in the RFPs.
Are OTAs a way to get in there faster, quicker, easier?
There's use of OTAs as well, yes. It's all in the hooks of what you're incentivizing and what you're valuing on that contract. As I mentioned before, when we go to OT for systems, it's effectiveness and suitability. And suitability always in the past has gotten traded off for effectiveness. And that's a culture that has to change, right? So, and you can only incentivize that with the contractors who are providing the product. And we have to be serious about it. So we've got to hold firm and hold people accountable for what we're putting on contract and what's being delivered.
OTs and other transaction authorities. Sorry if you didn't know what that was. I shame myself for having an acronym and not spelling it out. Sir.
I just want to thank the panel. I'll be brief. I work for a company called Bishop Ascendant. And the question is this. Your focus seems to be primarily on logistics and advancements in new-gen weapon systems and support systems. Do you have, or does anyone on the panel have a purview on defensive systems, like defensive systems which would address this relatively new threat of defending against these low-cost, high-effective attack strategies that have been deployed effectively in the past year or so?
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah.
But I think in all cases, you still have to sustain those systems, right? So whether we're talking about, deploying CWIS and sustaining that, right? I mean, there's been some public words about CWIS and its operational effectiveness, right? Or whether we're talking about small boats or whatever, right? There's going to be new threats, also some very conventional threats and hypersonics and all kinds of things that are out there. The interesting tech to counter any threat that we have still needs sustainment, right? And I think that's really where it comes back to putting, like the previous question was asking, right? Should we need to put the right data on contract to be able to understand what is effectiveness as a key performance parameter? It's not just the physics-based modeling to say, can we intercept this thing? It's also, can we intercept it when we've been deployed for 8 months and it's degraded in some way, and now what's it look like, right? And so being able to make that thing part of any contract, whether it's for countering a new threat or the very real threats that are currently out there today, we still need that sustainment enterprise to be able to do their work, right, as part of that.
But a rearm function obviously has to be a different magazine of the future, right? And we keep on, for the last 10 years, we've been talking about the magazine of the future from a counter US, UAS perspective. And so, based on the disruptive capabilities, offices, and throughout the DoD, there's obviously eyes wide open right now what we're seeing in the Red Sea. And so that capability and the way that it was evolving, from a Ukraine scenario, if you will, and then certainly 10 years of Iran backing and Houthis in Yemen certainly have given them the incubation to be able to do all of that. And so it's, to your point, low cost, high yield. And so countering that quickly, is where the entire Defense Department is acting. We, from the sustainer perspective, have to think through it from a rearm, obviously, about what munition would be, and that munition may be in a different flavor than what we think of munitions. It could, again, from directed energy to other things, but also disruptive capabilities is going to have to be, from all domains, is going to have to be the art going forward. Excuse me. Michael.
Nick Pond, Master Chief, you have the
Well,
final
how are you,
question.
sir? Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to get to the mic. Long-time sailor, first-time civilian, Admiral Sobek. Sir, I was wondering if you, in the interest of time, maybe just pick one. Truman Strike Group, summer of 22, went dangerously low on supplies. One of the things that they told me when I went out to see them was that the ability to go out on the economy and purchase what they needed because we couldn't get it to them shipped was really difficult to overcome. The bureaucracy involved with sending your chop ashore and finding what you need to get it out to the ship so that you can at least make ends meet until the approved shipping means can get it done. Were there any lessons learned, gaps, seams with DLA and MSC and others that might have been involved? Just curious.
Absolutely. And I won't speak truly to the problem set from the fleet perspective. Wasn't there, so I only know sort of what I learned from Ike, because there were some repeatable patterns that we saw. So it's not a lesson learned yet. It's a lesson identified still. And frankly, it becomes with the readiness and the understanding about the old days of POM and making sure that the pre-overseas movement is absolutely, beyond belief whole. The Truman, again, there was all, I think, a cast of reasons how that manifests itself. The Swiss cheese was on the deck plates of the Truman. But it started on the deck plates of the Truman as well, from a data perspective, understanding themselves, reporting themselves in the systems as antiquated as we are in some cases, either from a range and depth all the way through, again, what the next cycle was. Our ability to ramp up and get the right stores there, the after fact of Truman, we unloaded, I think, over 1,700 pallets of stuff that was never used. So we sent the wrong things in some cases. You can, again, the lessons, are out there as identified. Fast forward to Ike, moving out. She went from 250 pallets 48 hours prior to deployment to over 900 after 30 days of POM. And so, again, it's not a point the finger. It's all things where the system itself needs to understand itself better. What is the life cycle? Because if we get to a push logistics environment, which we have to, and get into the position and the need and where it's supposed to be, both land and ashore. We've got to think through that differently. And again, I'm sure I'll get some feedback on my comments. A little bit short and sweet, but there was a lot there, and it was a system. I won't say failure because again, the sailors got what they need eventually. But to your point, the bureaucracy took over. The system didn't respond in the way that it needed to at the time it needed to. And that was prior to deploying the ship. And in my opinion. Again, I'm after the fact guy, but also making sure we got the lessons learned.
Yeah, I want to touch on the.
Sorry for the heat.
Yeah, no, I appreciate make fun. Always yield me a beer.
Touching on the partner thing, on our partner nations. So we've been testing the waters, I'm going to say this, on how we can leverage our foreign partners, even just doing maintenance. We tried to do an H60 PMI, Plan Maintenance Interval, in Australia. They have H60s, we have H60s. Hey, it would be much smarter to go there and try it out. Policy really kicked our tails. So what we have been doing, working with it's with OpNav and OSD, identifying all those policies that hinder us from leveraging the capabilities in those countries and our partner nations, and it would include for resupplies as well, that we need to get out of the way. And frankly, I think a lot of stuff has been done there. We've done it now. We did the H60 event. We're actually doing F-18 work over there in Australia and some other areas. So we are, there's a lot of policy that was hindering us from doing some things. So I think that's super important. So if you come up with things that you've encountered, please let us know. I'll pass that up and add it to our list of things that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank.
I just wanted to jump in. I'm Doug Noble. I'm the J3 at the DLA headquarters. The Truman Strike Group Class 1 subsistence vignette from 2022 is a great example of contested logistics. And there's two lessons learned themes that I would offer up to the group, and the panel has talked about this, come up in this panel discussion. One is on our culture and our contracting approach. So one of the lessons learned was over 20 years of business, had a very just-in-time logistics, a very business-efficient contract structure for how we provide that food. That works great for bringing every last penny out of the cost of that product that you're getting. It's not so good in agility when you surge and you had an operational model that historically the Carrier Strike Group maybe takes 1 or 2 hits in the Gulf before proceeding in the fifth fleet, and then all of a sudden decides to park in sixth fleet AOR and stay there for a while. So the lesson learned is we need to be more agile in our contracting strategies for all commodities and all things to make sure that perhaps it might cost a little more, but we're paying for a little bit more resiliency in our support structure. So that's takeaway number one. The other takeaway was the importance of data integration. So we did not have good visibility to see what was on the ship, what was in the subsistence prime vendor catalog, what was available at all the different echelons across the fleet back in the States and what have you. So that slowed down the process and the speed to recovery. Since then, we have a variety of logistics operating tools that knit together where we can see end-to-end from wholesale to retail, all echelons in between, what's in our vendors' warehouses, what's on the ships, and all echelon, and have that site picture. So both in this vignette example, both DLA and Navy can look and see, what the stock posture is, where we see potential problems brewing. We can be more anticipatory in our logistics to say, well, hey, if the head count changes by 50%, 100%, 200%, whatever, do that what if analysis and very quickly assess if you're going to have a problem with your supply chain or not. So thanks.
Can I make just one last point? I mean, the burden share of that, and again, I liken it to where we were in the early 2000s for joint fires. And I believe this same kill chain is applicable to figure out sort of those integration patterns and how we're actually going to put, time on target, from different AORs, from different places. We don't have that right now. And we can't do it with the speed and need of the threat. And the threat can be ourselves of not knowing our port calls. All those things. So that's the way I'm seeing it from the tree line as far as the operational space. That's how we have to shape it within the MOCs to be able to do a similar approach as we have in joint fires. So to me, I'm glad we've kind of gotten further, but the application of that data integration, I would submit, again, from the operator perspective, is just not quite closed yet.
Thank you, sir. So final comments, Ann.
I think I've taken up enough bandwidth. But I do appreciate, I appreciate everyone's interest in the topic and everything you do every day to support our warfighters out there. So I know that they put their full trust and confidence in you as I do. Thank you.
Bottom line from us is maybe a continuous of warfighting function. I think that's a really great idea, and pushing me in and seeing that here, standing room only in the logistics. We're actually investing in capability to address current gaps. We're leveraging a reserve component through things like reload in obscure areas. I didn't talk about it much. Several other people talked about it. We're partnering with the Joint Force, working with allies and partners, and we're really focusing on a culture piece. Very different from core installations and logistics drills. Work in progress. We are working to change at Stevens Field, so it's going to take time, but this is our focus. We want to be able to act properly, sustain the force, and be able to operate and work to effectively support warfighting modalities. That's our goal. I have some bookmarks that have the highlights of our maritime sustainment strategy, and it also has some sustainment tips on that.
If you could real quick pull up my slide again, you'll see a QR code there. The Naval Heritage Center helped us out. They put a compendium together. Deon English, Chris Kavanaugh, and myself were able to kind of help shape a little bit of what contested environments look like back in World War II, and certainly bringing them forward in today's sort of vernacular and also context. I think it's important, again, for us to think through it as a team of teams, as I think we displayed at the panel today, from industry all the way through the Pentagon and beyond. And so it absolutely has to happen at the deck plate level. And so when we think through, again, and we've kind of made comment about, either apologizing, or thinking through that, hey, last year was, 4 people, now we have 400 or 140. I think what I've learned quickly, as been a consumer of my entire life, in my experience, that it's okay to be a logistician. It's okay, and it's okay, and be proud of that we have the firm footing that we need to as a warfighter to be able to get after to exactly what we need in this environment. It's no different than any other warfighter domain, and it absolutely has to come together at the right time in order for the other domains to open up in a way that air, land, sea, space, and seabed have to work it in the future. So we appreciate everything that you do for us, and in kind, we want to make sure we deliver for you. So thank you.
Last but not least, our host, Mr. Karen.
Thanks. I mean, great to be here. Thanks to the Navy League. It's a really exciting time, again, as a logistician, to be part of these efforts to forge resilient systems and bring about the innovative strategies that are going to uphold our logistics superiority and really enable our naval forces to prevail in the face of adversity. So thanks for putting this on. Thank you all for being here as well.
So on behalf of our president of Navy League, Chris Townsend, and our CEO, Mike Stevens, and thank all of you for sticking in here and staying for this important topic. We want to thank the panel.